All right. Hi. First off, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. As many of you dial in, I'll kick it off with some quick opening remarks. My name is George Demoni. I'm one of the partners here on the Ventures team at Plug and Play, and I am super excited for this Fireside Chat today with our founder and CEO, Saeed Amidi, and one of my favorite portfolio companies, Cement. So today, we know that COVID-19 has definitely presented a lot of challenges for startups, both on the operations side and growth side, and many have adapted their businesses and have been really, really successful. For example, actually about an hour ago, one of our portfolio companies in the insurtech space, Hippo, just announced a $150 million round at a $1.5 billion valuation. So we're super excited we're doing. It's a digital insurance agency focused on home insurance. I actually use them for my house, so I definitely recommend it. But enough of that. Today we have a really exciting fireside chat. So as mentioned, a lot of startups have found success in this market, and one of those startups is Cement. Hanif is co-founder and CEO of Cement. Has an amazing story, which I wanted to share a little bit of it today. Prior to the chat. So Hanif grew up in a lower income family, and he remembers his family receiving phone calls from debt collectors when he was growing up. So as a child, that really traumatized him. He made it his life mission for his kids to not witness what he had to witness growing up with the debt collectors almost harassing his family. Fast forward to today, Hanif is a serial entrepreneur and just closed a 50 million plus round in Cement, which is a more humane way to engage customers and help corporations collect on debts for consumers in a humane way, without going to debt collection, without any kind of harassment phone calls. So really excited to have him today join us in the fireside chat, and of course our founder and CEO Saeed Amidi, which is also a serial entrepreneur, has invested in over company with 11 years under his belt. Of course, the founder of this amazing institution, Plug and Play, and a man with that really doesn't need an introduction. So please join us in this amazing fireside chat, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll pass it to my colleague Simon, our rockstar MC.
Thanks, George, and good morning, everyone. Real pleasure to be with you. So today, brief agenda. We've got opening remarks, which you're experiencing right now. We'll go up into our fireside chat, and we're going to host a Q&A. So see, we've got a great number of people on the line. So in the middle of your screen, down the bottom, you'll notice a little Q&A box. So I'll be looking at that throughout the course of the conversation. So as questions come up, please use that and take advantage of it, and I'll do my best to host and moderate that Q&A towards the end of the conversation. If you've got questions for the team that are technical in nature, or otherwise, please use the chat box. But for the Q&A session, make sure you use that Q&A box. Other than that, let's hop into it. So George gave a little bit of an intro, but I've got a little bit more of a formal one. So Hanif Joshagani, he's the co-founder and the CEO of Cement, which is a behavioral analytics platform that provides customer engagement products to identify customers having trouble with their bills. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's raised over 100 million across 4 companies already that he's founded, with 3 exits so far. His background includes 15 years of senior roles in capital markets, energy, finance, business development, entrepreneurship, and in a broad range of industries, including investment banking, energy, and technology. He's really passionate about building high-performing teams, and for Cement, as George mentioned, truly passionate because it sits at the intersection of disruption, value creation, and social good. We are really honored to have him on the line, and really looking forward to this conversation. So, Hanif, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And great. And Saeed Amidi, for those who may not be familiar, Saeed is our CEO and our founder of Plug and Play, the world's largest innovation platform. bringing together the best startups, corporations, investors, and other platform players to accelerate and scale new technologies. He's a serial entrepreneur and a seasoned executive with nearly 30 years of experience in founding and growing successful companies across the globe. He's also one of Silicon Valley's most successful venture capitalists, with a portfolio exceeding over 1,000 startups and with notable exits such as PayPal, Danger, Dropbox, Lending Club, and many others. He's a global thought leader and champion of open innovation, with a real passion for inspiring and helping entrepreneurs and corporations bring about sustainable futures, and is truly passionate about entrepreneurship and helping entrepreneurs succeed. So thanks so much for joining us, Saeed, and I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. It is incredible having these talks with corporate partners, with, I have had this talk with mayors of different cities like Houston, and really try to understand how the leaders navigate through these challenging times. And then a couple of my colleagues says, why don't we also invite some of our portfolio companies, entrepreneurs, to join these webinar and chat. And the objective of this talks are, number one, to be more connected with you and with our community, but at the same time also face the reality that this is challenging times and different times. We will, of course, bring some little bit of history, little bit of personal background, and I cannot ask for a better co-host or person to share his journey with you than Hanif, who has perhaps a very similar background to myself, but I think he's at least 20 years younger and much better looking. Welcome, Hanif.
Thanks. I don't know about better looking, but thank you for having me.
Very good. Hanif, just to put some perspective into this talk, I would love to hear from you, a few minutes perhaps from your early life before you attended the universities and the different education institutions, and then a little bit about your second part of your professional life, being in investment banking and advisory services. And then, of course, we will focus a lot more on your entrepreneurial journey. But can you share with us your, your first part of your life and perhaps some of the exciting or challenging experiences that has shaped you?
Sure, Saeed. Happy to. I'll kind of fly at a high level on this stuff, but if you want to double click on anything, let me know. So I'm originally from Iran, same as you. My family got caught up in the revolution quite a bit. My dad opposed Khomeini when he took control, and so my mom was pregnant at the time. I'm actually born in 1980, which was a pretty chaotic time to be born in Iran. So my dad opposed Khomeini. Is one of the student groups that did my parents both were going to school in the States, University of Kentucky and MIT. And so when the revolution happened, they both were like, oh, we're going to go back. We're going to help our country, things like that. Like a lot of students did. Iran had actually the highest per capita students studying internationally at the time, very educated population. And so both of them went back. But when the revolution started to move towards Khomeini consolidating power, my dad opposed it. And so he was There was a lot of executions. Khomeini was very shrewd with the way he consolidated power. My dad, we had to go underground. They actually raided our house. My mom was pregnant with me. My mom got arrested, and my dad wasn't home. And my grandfather actually bribed enough people to get my mom out, and we went underground. And we waited until I was born and old enough to make the trek, and we hired like Kurdish smugglers to go over the mountains. And we were in Iraqi camps until refugee camps until I was, Canada took us in. And by that time I was about 13 and a half. So, people think that that's like actually a really tough whatever, but you got to keep perspective. I was young. Like, I don't remember, I didn't know anything better or out different. Like, if I had lived in Germany or the US or something like that, and then I went back to the camps, it would have been like a nightmare. But if you are basically raised there, it's, you get used to it. And so that was kind of the initial piece. And then we came over to Canada. We didn't have much. I came first, and I stayed with people who were like being paid by the government to hold us. The camps are getting dangerous, and they got the kids out first. And then my parents came a little bit after that. We didn't have much, they hadn't finished their degrees. It was difficult to get jobs. And the way I got out of that situation was through scholarships. All of my education, I had full rides. So I got lucky, I was smart enough to be able to, hustle and work hard and put myself on a different path, basically, and really started with academics.
Wonderful. If I remember right, you first arrived in Toronto, is it, in Canada? And
yeah, it was
high school and then to university.
That's right. And I studied at University of Chicago, and then I went to work in capital markets, and kind of that, going to University of Chicago was really the big, change difference maker. The caliber of people I was around, the aspiration that they had, the opportunities that it opened up, life took a very, very different trajectory after that.
I will touch on this little bit more during your entrepreneurial journey. But if I can ask you, what drove you to study hard? What, let's say, to get a full scholarship in all of your studies, it's not easy. I mean, again, perhaps you were, and again, I would assume in your early years in a camp, I'm sure the school quality was not very high caliber.
Yeah, no, it was non-existent. It's a good question. There was two things, one part of it was, my family, we hit a difficult, we made some choices, we had to live with them and the consequences thereof. But my family, both sides of my family, came from good families that were very educated and had a huge emphasis on education. And so, there was that, the fact that we ended up in bad times for a while didn't rewrite the DNA of okay, you're here now, you better be the best. Like my father, even after he arrived, he was out there look, I got a 93. He's like, who beat you? There's 4 kids got higher. It's what did they do differently than you? There's this concept of you're Hanif, you have to be the best, and anything less than that. And there was this concept of anything less than fighting and struggle and challenging yourself, you may as well lie dead. There was this concept of life is struggle, life is fighting, life is about challenges. And the minute that complacency sets in, you might as well just tie it up and say, I'm just going to be sheep now. So we always had that mindset. And honestly, we didn't end up in refugee camps because we were from, we ended up in refugee camps because my parents gave up their education to try to do something good for their country. So there was this DNA of you're destined to do great things. And so don't let your circumstances define you. So that was part of it. The other part of it, I had a lot of odd jobs, and one of them actually, this is kind of, my parents hadn't made it out yet. One of them was I was very young, like 14 or something, and I worked at a car wash. And this is really stupid. Like I'm really into mechanics and cars and stuff like that. And all my job at the time was just to drive it like the car's 10 feet and then dry them as they came out of the car wash. And the really nice car to me back then was like a Lincoln Town Car. And I was like, I sat in a nice car for the first time in my life. And I was driving it and I dried it. And I was like, what do you do? And at the time, the guy was like, well, I'm a lawyer downtown. And I was like, how do you become a lawyer? And he walked me through it. I was like, and at that moment, my goal at that point was a Lincoln Town Car, which sounds ridiculous now. But at that point, I was like, okay, I don't care what it takes. No one I know has a car like this. And I'm going to make sure that me and my family have exactly this. So that's kind of where I just kind of set myself to like, and I looked at it as a mission. Like it wasn't like I just didn't get by in life. From that point on, there was a strategic element of I have to win at everything. And if I don't, then I'm not gonna like, and I was determined to not let history repeat itself. So those were two things.
That's a very good motivator. And just to share with you, in 1979, 80, when your mom was pregnant with you, I was here in California in Silicon Valley at Sand Hill Road, actually in Menlo Park, where all of the VCs are. And I was attending Menlo College. And then suddenly my world blew up, which was the Iranian Revolution. And at the age of 20, I started working. And, with every challenge, there comes an opportunity. And I would not be here if it was not because of the Iranian Revolution and making me, I would say, a better man, because I had to start, I had a wake-up call. I was the most spoiled student in California, I can guarantee you. And, that suddenly it was a wake-up call, and I started working that summer and started actually my first company. But going forward, how do you compare your investment banking times and, working for a large organization? And what was your first aha moment to open your first startup? What year was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're not gonna love the answer. It was accidental, like the way I slipped into entrepreneurship. Um, you know, when I was a kid, like everybody thought that I should be a lawyer. Like they were convinced that I could, sell water to a well type of thing. I remember my dad, when his first job was a mechanic, and the way he tried to supplement his income is he would take older cars, fix them up, put them in front of the house, put them in the paper, one car at a time, try to sell them. And there was one moment where he couldn't sell a car, and he'd invested like our entire savings into the car. I think it was like an old E-Class Mercedes, and he went to the bathroom, and this couple was looking at the car, and he hadn't gotten out of the bathroom. I'd sold it, and it was that moment where I was like, yeah, I have a good ability to articulate value, get people excited, move things forward, but I somehow didn't end up going that path. I was good at math, and when you go to University of Chicago, they basically brainwash you into like, look, there's only two paths in the world. There's finance and consulting, and that's more where most people, or a PhD, and it's where most people end up. So I went into investment banking, honestly, not with a lot of thought. Like I wanted to be in business. And this seemed like the most obvious way to get into business. In my mind at the time, the difference between business, investment banking was a path towards becoming a businessman. And I didn't have the maturity or the understanding that being in business and being an investment banker are dramatically different things. So once I got to investment banking and then hedge funds and all this other stuff, I realized, I have to treat this next couple of years as personal development, not a career, and a stepping stone to something else, because I could feel that I had a lot to learn, but I wasn't going to be happy if this is all life was accelerating and getting promoted into these jobs. And so I wasn't sure where my exit would be and what it would look like. I didn't even know if it would be entrepreneurship. To me, it was being in business and stuff. And the opportunity that presented itself was one of the companies that I helped take public. Gave me a job to go kind of lead corporate finance through a bunch of acquisitions and things like that. That moved me to Calgary. I knew the business really well because I'd helped them kind of spin out of a bigger company and go public. And I learned about how to run, inside of an organization kind of thing. And honestly, that led to—
How many employees did you guys have in that first company?
So that company was big. So it was a $500 million IPO at a $2 billion valuation. So it wasn't a small company. It was an existing organization that was being spun out of an even bigger company. And it was a private co. This business unit had started to develop a very different risk profile than the parent. And so they wanted to spit it out because the way they needed to raise capital, grow, and acquire was at odds with the mothership's strategic direction. So they spun these two things out. I went in there, I had a mandate, I did the job, but I was now in Calgary. And Calgary, everybody thinks, oil and gas town, big corporate, but it's actually a very enterprising city. And while there are a handful of very large oil and gas companies, there's an entire ecosystem of not tech startups the way you think about them, but a ton of mom and pop oil field service, innovation, SCADA programs, hauling, trucking. These are all the entire food chain supporting E&P is all like small companies. And so there was a big DNA of that in Calgary, akin to like parts of Texas, basically. So there was a lot of ideas being floated around. And, I was actually at Stampede. I don't know if anybody knows what Stampede is. It's like a big party that happens here every summer. And I met a guy and he was like, look, you have the financial pedigree and the analysis part. I have the network of the deal flow and stuff like that. Why don't you leave your job and you come join me and we'll put together a boutique firm where we can introduce bulge bracket services to all these small companies that are popping up everywhere. And so that was my, at first I kind of agreed that day, but I had a couple of drinks, but then the next day we met and it was more, he followed up with me and I was like, yeah, I kind of remember that conversation. So I went and met with him and I was young enough at the time. This is like, I was 26 and I was like, why not? Let's just I was like 26, 28. And I was like, why not? Let's just go for it. If I'm going to swing for the fences, this is the time. So we set up this company. We started to bank a lot of fees. We didn't spend much of it. We started to actually put in our own money and almost have like a little into the deals that we were helping advise on. And along the way, helping these entrepreneurs, what I realized is, and that was like big aha moment, I'm on the wrong side of the table. Like, I don't want to be the advisor. I want to be the guy I'm talking to. And so that was my moment. And there was one company that came in, we turned them down because I got outvoted. And I saw the vision of what it could be. My partners did not. And so I sold out of the advisory firm. And I went to these guys that had just been rejected by CoreWest and said, hey, I'll come in, I'll work with you guys. I have an idea where we can take this. And it was a hardware thing to prevent oil spills. And I brought in my cousin, he has a master's in AI and computer science, and two other Persian guys that I know who have their PhDs in AI and stuff like that. We just re-engineered all of it. And that was our first business that kind of we built, and we had a bunch, we got the patents approved and we got a bunch of contracts, and it was like a quick exit after that. And that kind of led me down the path of kind of getting into like tech entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you said the idea was good. You left your firm and joined them and created a team. And now coming to your present company, how important do you think is the initial team that you have?
And
how do you orchestrate getting people on board. Can you share some early days of, I think you started the company about 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Cement. How did those early days come about?
That's a great question. So there's a certain, the super early stage stuff that you need in partners and employees and things like that is it evolves quite a bit as the company gets bigger. The risk appetite, the ability to work through a lot of chaos and unknowns, most importantly, the ability to hustle, work hard, deal with stress, and trust. So people say don't get into business with your friends. I take the other end of the spectrum. Early on, especially, I only ever do business with people that I have very close personal relationships with, where there's been a relationship that's stood the test of time, and I know how they're gonna be in good and bad times. So my co-founder, Tiffany, is someone that I'd known for a while, and someone that I consulted for some other companies that I'd invested in. And I knew exactly what I was getting. And now we have an interview process. We meet someone, and within 2 to 3 weeks, they have a job at Cement. You cannot go through that, in my opinion, early on. You need to have people that it's almost like, akin to family. Like, you have to have an incredibly deep amount of trust and comfort with their skill set. Otherwise, I don't think it works. Or you're introducing a lot of risk that it may not work, I should say.
So also, I mean, 2020 for me was supposed to be the year of sustainability. I wanted to implement what I have learned in software and in technology investing and apply it to hopefully make social impact and cleaner world. With I'm working very closely with Alliance to End Plastic Waste. I believe your company has a social aspect to it. And was that orchestrated from beginning, or as you defined the product, the social part of it also became important to you?
That's a great question. The genesis of Cement was, we sold half our last software company. My goal my entire life had been to make enough money to stabilize my family, to make sure nobody with my last name ever goes through what I went through. Once I'd achieved that, for me personally, like, money seemed like an empty calorie. And I actually lost my mojo a little bit, and I fell into a funk, because I was like, my journey has to be about more than that. It has to be more than here lies Hanif, he made some money. Like, I wanted it to be something where here lies Hanif, he made a difference. He had a positive impact. And I was actually looking for something where I was like, look, this time, anytime I had applied my mind and been like, hey, I think I have a way to solve this problem, to create a business or create a niche and make some money, it worked most of the time. But now it's like, I want to take a different approach. I want to take my mind out of the equation, apply my heart to something, and if I get really excited about it, then apply my mind and see if I can actually turn it into a business or not. And I was actually at a tech conference. Again, I was having a couple of drinks. All the good ideas seem to be.
The drink is a common denominator.
It's a common theme, exactly. So I was at a tech conference in Vancouver, and just complaining about the old days and reminiscing about the old days and all the difficulty that kind of we went through. I to this day, I get a bad reaction from 1-800 calls and bills. Like, my wife opens the bills. I can't do it. Like, the way we got carpet bombed by these people back in the day, I still have a negative emotional reaction to it 3 exits later. So I was sitting there reminiscing about the old days of being 14, 15 years old and screening calls and hiding bills and stuff like that. And a minute before, I'd been complaining about, hey, I don't have a passion. I need something really important to sink my teeth into. Otherwise, I can't do this anymore. And my friend literally is like, this is what you need to go solve. Like you were just going like, you've experienced it, you get it, you have the perspective of the consumer and the empathy for that. I was like, that's 20 years ago. There's no way that's still a problem. He's like, I would look into it. He said it with this seriousness, and I couldn't shake it. Like, we laughed it off, but starting the next day, like shell companies, product research, hundreds of interviews, business canvas models, like, building in a construct of the piece by piece, trying to understand why the problem has gone bigger, who the players are, what is the work cadences, how is it being solved. Incredibly deliberate. I think there was like 8 months of research that went into me building a thesis on why this hasn't been solved and why I think I can solve it. And once I thought I had that construct of, can I build a social capital company that also builds a great enterprise? Only then did we start to think about writing code or doing anything else. So this was, in fact, like it started as, I want to make the world a better place, but I know I need to get a lot of companies to pay me money to do that. And that's how it kind of evolved.
I know that you work with corporates that when they have past due bills, you try to take it over and deal with the client in a better way. First, recover the money, but at the same time, hopefully keep the clients. Again, this is very unusual business model. Was the beginning of your thoughts exactly that, or did you have to do a pivot? And also a second question, how did you come across Plug and Play, or how did we get to know each other? I'm curious because I don't exactly remember.
So, great question. I'll take the first part. The beauty of this so far has honestly been that because we did so much work up front and we pivoted with a bunch of ideas before we landed at a strategy that we validated through a lot of primary research and interviews with prospective buyers and stakeholders in the ecosystem, we had a pretty refined understanding of what we wanted to do before we went in and did it. Like we'd gone all the way to setting up shell companies and buying other people's software, and like we'd spent quite a bit of money and research and invested into like, if I want to do this, I want to do this right. And I'd learned the lesson of, understand the problem truly before you start to build a product, because it's very difficult to pivot with a product, right? So the beauty of like where we are, and I synthesized that with my own personal experiences and all the consumer research that we did with connecting with bureaus and stuff like that, and consumer protection bureaus. So the central thesis that a big problem, and I take what you said even a step further, the central tenet is save as many customers as possible and try to collect as much money as you can along the way. The lifetime value of that customer by saving them far exceeds the current balance. So if there's a trade-off decision to be made between hammering, blood from a stone every dollar you can upfront out of them versus saving them and holding their hand through tough times, the loyalty you get long-term by the time they're rehabbed, the value to the brand far exceeds carpet bombing them and like basically beating them into submission to get every dollar you can up front. And you build a better relationship with those customers. More importantly, you understand the customers better, which has a whole bunch of other applications. That central tenet didn't change. The engineering complexity of delivering that kind of transformative solution to massive companies, that's taken a long time and a lot of horsepower. But the North Star, I'm proud to say, has remained whole. The way we ran across, Plug and Play, it was on several vectors, but because, the ecosystem here, funny enough, like, I hate to say this, but I have a couple of friends, like the guys who run Traction Conference in Vancouver and work on Boast Capital, they're really good friends of mine. A bunch of startups out east, Sean Merritt, who, CEO of Owl, one of the smartest, sharpest guys I know. He's actually in Vancouver. His partners in Toronto. They have Plug and Play on their cap table. They're good friends of mine. I just kept running into this kind of story. And so I actually kind of, made the avert, like I should talk to these people because, it's being recommended, by everybody that I seem to run into in my ecosystem. So it wasn't a single point. It was like, I ran across this conversation of you should be talking to the plug and play guys time and time again. And so I made the attempt to make the connection, and then the plug and play guys were great. Like very responsive, we connected quickly, and things were good after that.
Thank you so much, Hanif, for the good words. We pride ourselves in our fintech practice or insurtech practice, to find great entrepreneurs, great ideas, and then hopefully with our connection and what we call innovation platform, help to their journey be more successful. And that comes primarily for introducing them to our corporate partners and venture capital partners. But if I can ask, I know that you also do some angel investing. What is your criteria? I mean, this is a cliche, but what is your criteria for investing in an entrepreneur or in a team?
Good question. So I haven't I have maybe like 20, 25 investments, something like that. The first and foremost, and I mean, if it's not like a close second, honestly, like, first, like if every ranking had equal weighting, first, second, and third out of 5 is the founders themselves. Like, what I've learned the hard way early on in my investing is if investing for me has a double-edged sword. Obviously, I want it to be successful. Obviously, I want to make some money, but I want to interact with the best and brightest, because interacting with those investments and those people has a virtual cycle on my personal evolution as well. And so I make this kind of determination of, an average idea in the hands of a rock star will still be a good business, right? Like an amazing idea in the hands of an average entrepreneur may not go anywhere. So in my mind, I've always been like, I need to surround myself with the very best, because that's the room that I need to be in. And so I try to find people where I see a track record of success. I see very, very high ability, like a combination of a couple of things: the ability to tell stories and lead, and this sense that people are willing to follow them through fire, like, because that's what leadership and executive being is about. A lot of analytical horsepower, because every idea there's 1,000 people chasing it, and you need to be very, very competent to be able to execute. And then a track record of success and things like that. So mostly it's around, is this a guy that I think could make anything successful? Does he have that kind of like, the hustle, the intelligence, and the charisma to lead something forward? After that, everything else is granular, honestly. So I don't have an actual kind of area that I invest in. I just try to surround myself with like the most talented people. And every time I see someone who's super talented that's getting something going, I'm like, you have to let me in for a little bit. It's just my strategy.
Yeah, that's great. We always say he or she has to be so passionate. And I always ask them, what if this project doesn't work? And if they have plan B, I said, good luck, because it is going to be a hard road to success. Yeah. And I recall the founders of Honey, which is like a coupon delivery system that PayPal just recently bought for $4 billion. But when the two founders came, especially the one that came up with the idea, he said, Saeed, I needed to clip coupons to be able to feed my kids. And, it's still done the same old way as 150 years ago. And then he started honey in, as you are purchasing, the coupons are delivered to you. But you know, there is a, Hanif, it's first of all, congratulations. You know, I was guessing, but you're exactly 20 years younger than me. So you're at the beginning of your journey. I hope you can be a leader. And maybe before I ask Simon to come back, has there been some challenges that you have overcome during this COVID-19 time? And do you have any advice for entrepreneurs in raising money during these tough times? And then we may answer some of the audience questions.
So our challenges were not the same as everybody else's. You know, since COVID lockdowns in mid-March, we were 60 people, then we're 140 now. So just in that period of time, we've dramatically scaled up the business. We have 50 open job positions right now. So the challenge was the other way, which is how do you take everybody remote, continue to scale the company massively while while improving time to contribution for new candidates, protect every employee, and despite the fact that they have a good job, their households might be negatively impacted, especially in Alberta, because we got double punch with oil and gas, oil going to negative and COVID. And so there's a lot of household impact, and kids were getting sent home and everything else. And we're telling them to work harder than ever, right? The average work hour, I think work week is like 70 hours easily, like, because all of a sudden the demand for our solutions spiked, right? So that's really been the challenge that we've been dealing with, is like, how do we support the employees through this while asking them to do more than ever before and onboarding so many people and so on. So those were the key challenges, like, you know, Cement Academy, which is like a 60-hour immersive onboarding program. It goes live in like 2 weeks so that we can get people. One of the biggest challenges was we're hiring people. A lot of natural learning was happening in the office. That's gone now. And then, so how do you get people productive? And when you're adding this many bodies, I think just in the last 3 weeks, we've hired 25 people. So it's like, how do you add these bodies productively? So we've gone from like that basic training that we were doing to like a very, very big immersive thing, which we brought in consultants, and it's like a massive, massive project to just get like, you know, 12 hours a day of training. So by the time they hit their teams, they've circumnavigated a lot of the learning curve of all the nuances and complexities of what we do. Everything else around it, mental health programs and expense budgets, you know, mental health days if they need to take time off, you know, supply chain programs. So if somebody goes down with COVID, you know, we have logistics in place to support them and their family with food, groceries, whatever they need, to make sure everybody's okay. Roll calls to make sure nobody's family or them have been affected. You know, DoorDash accounts for everyone. So by the time Friday hits and everybody's wiped out from the week, they don't have to worry about dinner, and their meals are on us. Like all these things on the edges to make sure that we are properly supporting the employees, because we're asking them for a lot, so we have to give a lot. Like life, you know, the worst thing you can do is keep pushing your team and not give anything back, right? Like life is two ways. So that's really the way we've tried to deal with that part of it. The fundraising part, you know, it's whether it's COVID challenge or some other business challenge, it's always the same. Like the way I've always thought about fundraising, doing some fundraising successfully, is to think of it as an ongoing stream of activity rather than a periodic transaction. So we try to do a good job of you know, like as soon as I closed the people who didn't make it, but I really, really liked into the round, like some of the top VCs, where I was like, man, you know, we picked the winner, but those guys would have also been great to work with. We maintain really good relationships with those people, and we're engaging them at a regular cadence, letting them know what's going on in the business, asking them for help to see how helpful they're actually going to be along the way, building rapport with them so that you have a shorthand with them and you have some experience with them, they get to see you operate over a window of time and vice versa. So by the time you're fundraising, it doesn't look like some shotgun pattern, I'm just getting to know you now situation. That's kind of like the guys who did our seed, I knew a year, they called us after the Angel. Like every single round, I start to plan the next round from a relationship standpoint right away. So I don't wait until it's like, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is before the round. I start talking to the marketplace, as oftentimes a year before we're thinking about financing to build those relationships. And I've generally found that to be very, very helpful. The other thing is because we have existing VCs on our team, investors are really good about supporting companies through difficulty if they have confidence in the execution capabilities of the executives. So over communicating, if you're communicating at say X interval, you have to communicate at 3X interval and embrace the difficult conversations as things get difficult and be decisive. If you do that and you're very, very good at executing through challenge, if you're good at being a wartime entrepreneur, and you communicate regularly and make the VCs feel like they're working with you on the difficulties, I've generally found them to be pretty supportive of us through difficult times. So those would be my two big. Well, oftentimes in the investments that I make that I get really frustrated are the guys that are really communicating well with me when they need my money. And the minute they close around, it's like, what happened? Are we no longer, like, they just like, it's like once every like 120 days is a quick little email and that's all I get. I'm like, that's not the way to do things.
Congratulations. Since I'm a little older than you, I can say I'm very proud of you. The passion comes through incredibly well. And, again, I don't know if Simon is going to come on for the audience question, but let me ask the last question. I agree with you. I usually have a 7:30 in the morning meeting with like today was with our insurance tech, fintech, and health tech teams. And that is roughly about 65 people. And a lot of learning and a lot of onboarding happened naturally in these, what would you call, weekly meeting. How do you overcome that if you cannot meet in the hallways, if you cannot meet face to face? And are you okay with remote working?
We're learning to live with it, but I hate it personally. Like, I'm a people person. Like, I was the guy, with the Nerf gun that would run into calls and shoot people with the Nerf gun. And, our jobs are intense enough. I try to make it like, almost like we call them cementers. It's like, once you're part of this company, I treat you like you're a member of my family, down to the assistants and everything else. My executive admin, she's basically like my office mom. And when it was a birthday, I took her and her whole family to the mountains and I got them like an entire weekend, whatever. Like, these people, you treat them like your family and they work for you and for the company like they're a member of a family. So for me, I don't like this. I don't get to build the same relationships with the new candidates that I did with the ones that were in the office in the past. So I can't wait till we get a vaccine. So the cultural part is, I wish I had an answer. I do my best to be leading in the vanguard, over communicate. We've moved our town halls from like quarterly to monthly. Shareholder, I'm gonna start, I haven't done it yet. We'll see how it works. But one idea I had was CEO communication channel, and I'm gonna start doing video logs and everything else. What I've done is set up, office hours. So I have 12, 15-minute office hours a week. Anybody in the company can book and ask me about anything, whether it's personal, about the business, whatever. Just so, again, I can be like, look, if I can help you, whether it's because you're trying to buy a house or whether it's you trying to understand the direction of the company. We had people coming in from South Africa that we recruited. I connected them to my bankers. We had people whose portfolios were getting sunk. I connected them to my advisors. We had people who just wanted me to walk me through the NLP work that they're doing. I listened and provided feedback. So it's just whatever it is, like, you try to lead from the vanguard to hold the culture together as best as you can, but it's still not going to be as good as when you're in the office. The other part of it, I think, is going to be like, you're right, the natural learning was incredibly helpful. We've lost that, and our time to contribution on new candidates dropped like dramatically. And so we're hoping Cement Academy, which we're investing heavily into, will help reduce that pain. But time will tell.
Thank you. Go ahead, Simon.
Well, this has been great. I sort of feel like you guys just keep going. So it's been a really good conversation. And if we've got a few different questions here, but one's from Blair Hone, and he said, what do you look for in new hires? Can you speak to attitude, experience, education? He's from Calgary, and he's very interested in Cement Academy.
So what do we look for in new hires? It really depends on the role, obviously. We're hiring on a lot of different vectors now. What I would say is the common theme is people that treat this like more than a job. Like, they're excited about chasing greatness, and they are willing to do whatever it takes to get there. When you get, there's two parts. I guess there's three parts to, the way we would look at a cement candidate. Adhering to our values, we try to assess that inside of the conversations. But, I'll give you a great example of someone that I actually convinced not to take a job. She was a rock star, very technically competent, which is always one of the key criteria, is technically elite in their craft. So that's one part of how we hire. But then she just had a baby, and she was going back into the workforce, and she was traveling between two homes, and she wanted a lot of work-life balance and flexibility. And I was like, we just created a category, and we're trying to win it within a window before 10 more competitors show up. I got to be honest, I really like you. And because I really like you, I'm going to be honest that you're not going to get what you're looking for here. And so people that are focused on optimizing for lifestyle instead of optimizing for success and chasing greatness today at Cement, maybe in the future as we start to become a more balanced, mature company, different story. But today at Cement, they're not going to fit in here. So there's a strict no asshole policy. So anybody that rubs us off as they're not going to be grounded, empathetic to people around them, have the right set of values about being just a decent, collaborative human being, they're out. Or they convince us in the interview that they get in here, and within a week and a half, half the team is like, oh my God, like what kind of monster did we just hire? And they normally flesh out pretty quickly. So if you are like decent human being, grounded, decent human being who wants to work really, really hard to chase greatness amongst really, really smart people, and you're a lead in their craft. I know that sounds like a unicorn every time, but like we try to like validate for those three things, and that's mainly. And then beyond that, it's all departmental specific, but
for sure.
Exactly.
No, that's a good criteria.
Years, like we try not to get hung up on those things, honestly.
Right. Look, and we've got two questions here around raising funds, and you've been through this a number of times with your other companies and with Cement, but are there particular considerations that might be relevant right now for even companies that you're advising who are considering, is it a good time to raise? Maybe you could speak to
I actually
on that.
think it is, honestly. Like there's always, March, part of April, maybe, there was a deer in headlights moment, like where every VC, they hadn't constructed their thesis on what the next 2 years were going to look like. They were all taking a wait and see approach. Whatever the new normal was going to be, they wanted to have visibility or thesis of what that's going to look like before they start deploying again, right? To figure out within the world of tech, what are the areas, like if you look at the great companies in tech and disruption, especially around efficiency, essential processes, workflows, things like that, recessions are a great time to build tech companies. They're a great time. VCs know that, and their amount of money sitting on VC balance sheets is insane. So they just were trying to develop a thesis into how the world has changed. So what are the areas that they're going to focus on? And some areas are now going to get a lot more capital. Some areas are going to get less, but the ones that are going to win are going to be able to consolidate and come out stronger than ever. So I don't see a long-term, we're not going to deploy capital. It's just, we're going to risk adjust subsegments of the technology SKUs differently. And then we're still going to deploy capital. And the really good stuff is going to be more competitive than before, because a bunch of stuff that was like very, very popular has now kind of really been reined in. So it will kind of put more focus on some of these other like productivity, essential workflows, B2B, enterprise, like those things are going to do extremely well, and I think become more competitive than ever.
That's fantastic. And look, my final question would be, look, everyone's working really hard right now. I think there was a study that just came out indicating that with this virtual world, all of our days are 20% longer, etc. As you're driving hard for greatness, like what's the well for you? Like where do you go for encouragement? Where do you go to refill the inspiration cup? How do you keep yourself motivated and in a healthy spot?
My family first and foremost. Like my mom, I couldn't see my mom for a while. Me and my mom are really, really close for obvious, everything we've been through together. My wife, I got 2 young kids. Spending time with them, they know, they're very, very supportive of what I've endeavored to do, but it's difficult on them. It's difficult on all of them. But they put on a really brave face and they support me through it all. And the small pockets of time, I don't have as much free time, but I try to make the time that I do have free incredibly high quality. And spending time with them in those pockets, just it's the mountains and my family, I would say, are the 2 big things. It's like just this past weekend, I took I went on a hike with my wife and my family, and it's just, those are the things that really help me gain perspective and refresh and recharge, so I don't actually have to look very far. Like a game of backgammon with my mom and a good meal, and we're good. Like those are the things that, and we talk about the old days and everything else, and I play Legos with my son, and that's it. That's all I need. It's the simple, when you have this life, it's like the simple and the innocence of it all. It makes it all worth it, and you realize what you're fighting for.
Wonderful.
So that to me is the most important thing.
Hanif, it's great having you with us. Thank you so much, Simon. I love your story. I love your passion, and wish you great success. And hopefully we can see each other soon in Calgary or in California.
Sounds like a plan. Hopefully California, because by the time they open up, it'll be too cold here. I'll volunteer to come.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Everybody. Thanks.
Thanks to you both. And look, I want to thank everyone for joining this Fireside Chat this morning. It was a great, inspiring session. If you would, there's a little pop-up survey on your screen. It'll take you literally 5 seconds to let us know what you thought of this session. And if you have thoughts for future sessions that we can do, startups to feature, or corporate partners, etc., please do drop us a line. Wish you all very, very best for this week, and we will see you soon for another Fireside Chat.